put up a petition and say, this man should give account of the amount of money he has been collecting in Abuja. I don't see anything wrong with that. But I hear that the State House of Assembly has recommended that the NJC should punish her. But let me see under what ground the NJC will look into that matter and punish the woman.
So, based on all of this, you still say we don't need any reforms?
Well, I don't see what reforms we need here.
Okay, Mr. Bani, then maybe
my submission is that we need a reform. We are very fortunate presently in Nigeria to have a government, that has a clear vision and mission to fight certain ills in the society, including corruption. Now, you need an efficient justice system in order to ensure that the judiciary is in tandem with the aims and objective of the executive. Now, whether the judiciary presently can meet up that expectation, I'm afraid that I cannot. If you put up the issue of judicial system for a discussion on that social media, you will see the reactions of Nigeria, because most of them are, they suffer a lot of injustices here and there. People say a lot of things against the judicial system. So I think I'm an advocate of a reform. And the kind of reform I am advocating, we say it in the course of this particular program, it should be a bit holistic. We should sit down and plan 4-year plan for the judiciary, strategic plan, in order to move our judicial system forward. We have had instances where somebody was convicted of a crime in this country and never spent any day in prison. We have had an instance where somebody is alleged to have stolen several billions and there was conviction and the person was only asked to pay only 3 million and walked home. We have also had instances where somebody was alleged to have stolen several billions of naira. He was asked to pay only a fine of 750,000 naira and he went home that same day. And so we have had instances where there has been a misapplication of, justice in the country, where the judiciary is not clearly in tandem with this, being sensitive with the feeling and yearnings of and aspirations of Nigerians. To the extent that today there is issue of people taking laws into their hand because they don't have absolute confidence in judiciary. So I'm saying there are areas of improvement and judicial reform. I'm talking about long delays in proceedings. We're talking about congestion of courts. There is inadequate infrastructure. There is what we call lack of access to justice by the poor. There is issue of outdated laws. Even our laws, some of them are outdated. We need to reform them. An issue of prison congestion. So there are so many issues that if somebody says there are no room for reforms, there's something fundamentally wrong because we are not getting it right even as a country. We have had issues where our cases were decided in a manner that is very fast in the UK, even in American courts. But over here, our cases since 2007 of all the governors that were accused of corruption cases are still lingering. The premier matters are still before the Supreme Court. We have not even gone to the substantive cases. So I'm saying that our judiciary requires, if anyone says there is no room for reform, then something is wrong, with that thinking and logic.
Now, there are aspects of some of these prosecutions that lie heavily on the executive. Now, for instance, we have had a case of a governor who was tried here. We have also had the same governor tried in another jurisdiction under a different, with different speed or dispatch. Now, what happens is that the executive is the custodian of the welfare of it executes the activities that runs society. Now, if there is somebody who is to be prosecuted, the state prosecutes that person on behalf of the people, and the state has to gather its facts. The state has to find lawyers, find detectives. This is what other jurisdictions do. This is what we did not do here. Mm-hmm. How do we not pie this error on the judiciary? It is the information that has been placed before the courts that judges hear and give judgments. So if you reform the judiciary, will you also go and reform the detectives and the police who ought to investigate this matter, and then the lawyers who would have prepared their case very well? We know how much British spent in investigating that case. That is not judiciary, but it is the information extracted from this investigation that you will use in securing conviction. Now, the issue of delay by the court themselves, I've already addressed it, that the rules are already there. Now, it is for us to activate them. Why are you not adjourning this matter from day to day? Why is it delaying? So, to that extent, I still argue that there is no reform. Let us exhaust what we have.
So, in other words, the fact that a judge adjourns a case from maybe the 12th of August to the 26th of September should not apply. If going by the rules, the High Court rules in Lagos, is supposed to be a day-to-day adjournment, that's what
that is what the rules provide. So let us inquire into why. Let us try to apply it.
It could be that the judge has a long list of other cases. Which is also one of the areas some of us are advocating, that issue of even recruitment of justices.
Yes.
There is an issue with it. Now,
Mr. Bani, let me just stop you there, and we'll need to take a quick break so that we can come back and continue. But just before we do that, let me take this comments. Fred Iqbal says, Mr. Gio, I want to ask you, why do we have more poor people being prosecuted in court than the rich? That's from Fred Iqbal. You'll answer that when we come back. Architect Balarabe says, judicial system needs reform based on the high number of corrupt judges. We need a system to curtail and block leakages. FR says, there's always room for improvement. Saying the instrument we have is enough is absurd. That's FR. Elias Jadi says, perhaps the first reform needed in Nigeria's judiciary is a reorientation of the personnel charged with justice administration. We'll take a moment and come back to continue the conversations. Please don't go away. Welcome back. We're looking at Nigeria's judiciary. Is there hope for more reforms? Specific reforms, generalized reforms. I have two gentlemen in the studio. One says, we need reforms. The other one says, we need the people to change. Not just, if you look at all the laws, what about the individuals that are executing these reforms you're talking about? So he asked the first question, so maybe you should ask him a question.
What? Can you remind me of the question?
No, you can ask him a question, why he says there's need for more reform.
Yeah, I said there's a need for reforms.
Why do you say so?
Well, I'm saying so because even the critical stakeholders in the judiciary have echoed the same thing. Now, when retired Honorable Justice Dahiru Mustafa, assumed the position of the CJN of the Supreme Court of the country, you know what he said? He said that Nigerian judiciary requires a radical surgical reforms. That is the word he used. And he went about implementing some of the reforms he felt like implementing, but the shortness of his tenure did not allow him to go the entire hog. Now, when retired Aloma Mukhtar took over, she echoed the same thing. In fact, she said that the judiciary, has issue, especially with issue of corruption. And she came out, full blast with issue of disciplinary justices of various courts. And then she was very firm, and she went about applying some of the reforms, which is being carried on now by the present CJN. So if all these stakeholders, this CJN, Chief Justice of the Federation, will come and tell you that, look, the judiciary requires surgical reforms, then I see no reason why other person will now be arguing that there shouldn't be reforms. We have issue with judiciary. So many issues that a lot of people today, you ask them on the street, what they want to be done in this particular nation. They will tell you that judiciary is one of the critical, sector we should deal with. Now, if you have a government that has a vision of fighting corruption, and you now have a different judiciary that has a different perception of, corruption, where people who are said to be corrupt, we just walk in on technical justice, they just walk away.
But you're doing his line. He talks about the fact that the judiciary, the issue with the judiciary is not necessarily the reforms as much as it is the people